The scavenger ship Gumiho's Luck floated in the deep silence of space. It was a small ship, patched and worn but reliable. Its crew was small too. They were far from any human colony, looking for anything valuable in the empty black. Captain Sumi watched the main screen. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. In front of the ship was their discovery. A massive, derelict vessel. It was like nothing they had ever seen. It wasn't made of clean, human metal. It looked more like a seashell or dark, polished bone. It was silent and dark, a ghost. Anything on the scanners? Sumi asked. Danny was at the engineering station. He was a quiet man, more comfortable with machines than people. He shook his head. No energy readings. No life signs. It's just empty. It has been for a very long time. The third person on the bridge was Gene. He was the ship's security. He stood tall and strong, always ready for a fight. He grinned. It's creepy, but creepy usually means valuable. Let's go take a look. Somi nodded. All right, suit up. A quick in and out. Danny, you're with him. I need your eyes on any alien tech. Gene, you keep him safe. Soon, Danny and Gene were in their environment suits, crossing the short, cold space between the ships. The derelict ship had a large opening like a wound. They flew inside. The inside of the alien ship was strange. The walls were curved and smooth, like the inside of a giant creature. There were no sharp corners. The light from their helmets showed everything in long, dancing shadows. And then, they saw the bodies. They were everywhere. Aliens with long limbs and gray, dry skin. They were not torn apart. They looked like they had just fallen down and never gotten up. There were no signs of a battle. No laser burns, no broken doors. It was a graveyard. What happened to them? Jin's voice was quiet over the radio. I don't know, Danny whispered. He felt a cold fear in his stomach. It's like all the life was just sucked out of them. They moved deeper into the ship. The silence was heavy. Their own breathing was the loudest sound. Finally, they reached a large circular room in the very center of the ship. It was different from the rest. It was clean and perfect. And in the middle of the room, on a raised platform, stood a suit of armor that was beautiful and terrifying. It was black like obsidian with pieces that looked like polished bone. It was not bulky like human armor. It looked like a second skin, waiting for its owner. It stood tall and proud, the only thing in the whole ship that wasn't covered in dust. Danny moved closer, his engineer's mind curious. There was writing on the platform, strange, swirling symbols. He held up his datapad, letting it try to translate. Be careful, Danny, Gene said, his hand on his weapon. The datapad screen flickered. Words popped up, one after another. Warning, annihilation vector, final host, do not interface. Danny took a step back. Gene, don't touch anything. This is bad. This is a weapon. But it was too late. Gene, wanting to get a better look, reached out a gloved hand to feel the strange material of the armor. The moment his fingers touched the black surface, the suit came alive. Thin, black tendrils, like wires, shot out from the suit. They were faster than anything Danny had ever seen. They pierced Jin's environment suit like it was paper. They dug into his arm. Gene screamed. It was a short, horrible sound. Danny watched, frozen in horror. He saw the color drain from Jin's face. He saw his friend's strong body shrivel and crack. In just a few seconds, Gene turned to gray dust inside his suit. The dust settled on the floor. The black tendrils retracted back into the armor, which was now smooth and perfect again. As if nothing had happened, Danny couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. Gene was just gone. Gene, Danny, report. Sumi's voice was sharp in his ear, full of panic. We have a problem. A big ship just dropped out of hyperspace. It's the Kthar Armada. Everyone in this part of space knew that name. They were conquerors, ruthless and powerful. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they didn't. Danny finally found his voice. Captain, Gene is dead. The suit. It killed him. Get back to the ship. Now, Sumi ordered. Danny turned to run, but a new voice filled his helmet. It was a harsh, clicking sound, translated by the ship's computer. Human scavenger vessel Gumiho's Luck. This is the Kthar Armada. You have trespassed on a forbidden world. You have discovered a forbidden artifact. You will hand over the xenophage armor immediately. If you do not comply, you will be destroyed. Danny ran. He ran back through the hallway of corpses, his heart pounding. He could hear the sounds of Kthar fighters launching from their ship. They were coming. He reached the airlock where their small shuttle was connected. He saw other members of his crew, Hannah and Min-Soo, already there, their faces pale with fear. Where's Gene? Hannah asked. Danny just shook his head, his eyes full of terror. They understood. Suddenly, the whole derelict ship shook. A Kthar boarding pod had slammed into the hull nearby. The sound of metal tearing was awful. Soon, they would be here. Captain Sumi's voice was tight. Danny, Hannah, Min-Soo, get to the shuttle. We are leaving. They rushed into the shuttle. Danny was the last one in. As he turned to close the airlock door, he saw them. Thar soldiers. They were tall, with tough, greenish skin and cold, black eyes. They carried heavy plasma rifles. They saw the shuttle and raised their weapons. Plasma bolts, bright and hot, filled the corridor. One bolt hit Min-Soo in the back. He fell without a sound. Hannah screamed and tried to pull him in, but another bolt hit her in the side. She collapsed. Danny was alone in the airlock doorway. He saw his friends, his crew, dead or dying. He saw the Kthar soldiers advancing, their weapons glowing. He saw the empty, dark space behind the shuttle. There was no escape. The Gumiho's luck couldn't fight the Kthar ship. They were all going to die. And then he thought of the suit. The xenophage armor. The thing that had killed Jean in a second. The Kthar were terrified of it. They wanted it. It was a weapon. A terrible, horrible weapon. It was the only weapon they had. It was a crazy, stupid, suicidal idea. But it was the only idea he had. Captain, Danny said, his voice surprisingly calm. Get the ship ready to run. Don't wait for me. What? Danny, no. Sumi shouted back. But Danny wasn't listening. He turned and ran. He didn't run towards the shuttle. He ran back into the derelict ship, back towards the central room, back towards the suit. The Kthar soldiers saw him and fired. The plasma bolts burned the air around him. One grazed his leg and he cried out in pain, but he kept running. He had to get to the suit. He stumbled back into the round room. The black armor was still standing there, silent and waiting. The symbols on the dais still glowed with their deadly warning. The Kthar soldiers were right behind him. He could hear their heavy footsteps. There was no time for fear, no time to think. Danny remembered the symbols. Do not interface. But he was an engineer. He saw the pattern on the dais. It wasn't a lock. It was a control panel. A safety with a final, desperate prayer. He slammed his hand onto the dais, not on the center, but on a specific sequence of symbols he hoped would disable the safety protocols. Then, he turned and threw himself at the black suit that he expected to be turned to dust like Jean. Instead, the suit opened for him. The obsidian and bone plates seemed to melt. They wrapped around his body. It was cold, so cold it burned. He felt a pain worse than anything he had ever known. It felt like every nerve in his body was on fire. He felt the suit digging into his skin, connecting to his spine, his brain. A cold, alien presence flooded his mind. It was ancient. It was hungry. Images flashed before his eyes. Stars dying. Worlds burning. Entire civilizations being erased. He felt the suit's purpose. It was not a tool. It was a predator, made to end wars by ending the species that fought them. The Kthar soldiers burst into the room. They stopped when they saw him. Danny was no longer just Danny. He was encased in the perfect, terrifying armor. It felt like a second skin, but it was strong as a battleship. He could feel the power in it. He could feel its hunger. The lead Kthar soldier shouted an order and raised his rifle. Danny didn't even have to think. The suit moved for him. He was a blur. He moved faster than a human should be able to move. He slapped the rifle aside, and the metal barrel bent like plastic. With his other hand, now covered in sharp, black claws, he struck the soldier in the chest. The Kthar armor offered no protection. The claws went right through. But the soldier didn't just die. Danny felt a strange sensation through the suit. Pulling feeling. He saw a faint, glowing light leave the soldier's body and get absorbed into the black armor. The Kthar soldier crumpled, his body turning gray and dry, just like the original owners of this ship. The other soldiers froze for a moment, stunned by what they saw. Inside the helmet, Danny stared at the empty husk that was once a living being. He should have felt sick. He should have felt scared. But the suit's cold presence in his mind muted those feelings. All he felt was a grim, dark purpose. He had put on the monster to fight monsters. And now, it was time to hunt. The pain was a storm inside Danny's head. It was not just the physical feeling of the cold suit gripping his body. It was a flood of information, of memories that were not his own. He saw stars growing old and dying. He saw fleets of strange ships turning to dust. He felt the final, silent screams of entire worlds. The suit was not just armor. It was a library of death. A cold, clear thought, sharp as a knife, cut through the chaos in his mind. It was not his own thought. Biological host identified. Neural interface complete. You are the final host. Danny tried to speak, to scream, but his mouth would not open. The helmet was part of his face now. A silent, internal scream was all he could manage. Query. Directive? The cold presence asked. The two remaining Kthar soldiers recovered from their shock. Their comrade was a dry husk on the floor. With angry roars, they raised their plasma rifles. Bright green energy bolts filled the small room, hitting Danny square in the chest. He braced for impact, for burning pain. But it never came. The bolts of plasma energy did not burn him. Instead, the black armor on his chest seemed to drink the light and the heat. A faint, glowing pattern spread across the suit for a second, like veins of green fire, and then faded. The suit felt warmer, stronger. Energy source acquired. Low quality. Insufficient for sustained operation, the suit's voice noted. Almost bored. One of the soldiers, foolishly brave, charged forward, trying to use his rifle as a club. Danny's arm moved without him telling it to. The suit was faster than his own nerves. His hand, now a sharp, black claw, shot out and grabbed the soldier's weapon. He crushed it like it was made of glass. The soldier stared in horror. Danny looked at him. Through the helmet's visor, the world was tinted a faint red. He could see the soldier's life force, a flickering warm light inside his body. The suit yearned for it. No, Danny whispered inside his mind, but the suit was hungry. Danny's other hand moved, piercing the soldier's armor. He felt that same pulling sensation. The warm, glowing light flowed from the soldier into the suit. The light flickered and died, and the soldier crumbled into dust. The last soldier turned and ran, screaming a warning into his communicator. Danny stood there, surrounded by dust. He had killed 3 beings. He had felt them die. He had felt the suit feed on them. A deep, cold horror settled in his stomach. What had he become? Directive, the suit asked again, impatient. Danny thought of his ship, of Sumi, of Hannah and Minsu, bleeding in the shuttle. He thought of Jean, turned to dust by this very suit. A new feeling pushed back the horror. Anger. A fierce, burning need to protect what was left. Get me back to my ship, Danny thought, hard and clear. Directive acknowledged. Protection of designated assets. The suit moved, and Danny moved with it. It was like a second, more powerful body. He ran out of the central room, back into the curved hallways. He was not clumsy in the suit. He was fast. Faster than any human. His footsteps were silent. He saw more Kthar soldiers up ahead, setting up a heavy weapon. They saw him and fired. The suit showed him lines of light in his vision, predicting the path of the plasma bolts. He moved without thinking, dodging the fire effortlessly. He was upon them in a second. It was not a fight. It was a harvest. His claws cut through their armor. The suit drank their life force. With every soldier that fell, the suit grew a little warmer, a little more powerful. Danny felt a terrifying thrill with each one. The suit was giving him strength, but it was also feeding him its own dark joy. The joy of the hunt. He reached the airlock. The shuttle door was still open. Hannah was on the floor, clutching her side. Her eyes were closed. Minsu was not moving at all. The sight of them, his friends, broken and bleeding, cut through the suit's cold influence. This was why he had done it. This was the reason. He stepped into the shuttle. Hannah's eyes fluttered open. She saw him, a tall, faceless figure of black obsidian and bone, standing in the doorway, covered in the dust of his victims. She let out a weak, terrified whimper and tried to crawl away from him. Hannah, Danny said. His voice came out distorted. It was a deep, electronic growl, layered with a colder, alien sound. It was not his voice. Hannah froze, her eyes wide with confusion and fear.
Danny.
It's me, the distorted voice replied. He took a step towards her, wanting to help. Stay back, she screamed, pressing herself against the wall. The sound of her fear was like a physical blow. He stopped moving. He looked down at his hands. They were black claws, still dusted with gray powder. He did not look like Danny. He looked like a monster from the derelict ship. He felt like one. A loud clang echoed through the shuttle. The Kthar had sealed the main airlock of the derelict ship. They were trapped. Captain Sumi's voice was frantic in his comms. Danny, the Kthar cruiser is powering its main weapon. They're gonna blow the entire derelict ship to pieces. We can't get the shuttle free. Danny looked out the shuttle's viewport. He could see the massive Kthar cruiser turning. A large cannon on its belly began to glow with a dangerous red light. It was targeting them. In a few seconds, the derelict ship, the shuttle, and all of them would be vaporized. He had to draw their fire. He had to give the Gummihose Luck a chance to escape. He turned and walked back to the shuttle's airlock door. Danny, what are you doing? Sumi asked. He looked back at Hannah, who was still staring at him in pure terror. He looked at the unmoving form of Minsu. He thought of Sumi and the rest of the crew on the ship. His crew. His family. He made a decision. He turned his back on the shuttle and faced the sealed airlock door. He focused his will. Suit, get me through that door. Then, get me to that cruiser. Directive acknowledged. The suit responded instantly. The black material on his arms shifted. It formed two large, brutal-looking blades. With a speed that was a blur, he stabbed the blades into the metal of the airlock door. The tough alien metal shrieked and tore like paper. He carved a large, jagged hole, kicking the piece inward. He didn't look back. He stepped through the hole, out of the shuttle, and back into the derelict ship. The airlock leading to space was sealed shut. Proceed to hull breach caused by Cthar boarding pod, the suit suggested, displaying a map in his mind. He ran. He was a black shadow moving through the dead ship. He found the torn open section where the boarding pod had smashed through. The air was gone here, and the cold of space waited. He could see the stars, and the massive, menacing shape of the Cthar cruiser. The cruiser's main cannon was glowing bright red now. It was almost ready to fire. There was no ship. Nos chatel. Just him and the void. How do I get over there? He thought, a spike of panic in his mind. Propulsion system available. Utilizing consumed bioenergy. The suit went rigid on his back. Several small, nozzle-like openings formed. A moment later, with a silent, powerful burst of contained energy, he was launched into the empty space. He was flying. Flying without a ship, straight towards the enemy warship on the bridge of the Gumiho's Luck. Captain Sumi stared at her screen in disbelief. She saw a small, black object leave the derelict ship and streak towards the Cthar cruiser. What is that? One of her crew asked. Sumi zoomed in. Her blood ran cold. It was a humanoid shape, a figure in black armor. It's Danny, she whispered. She watched, her hand over her mouth, as the Cthar cruiser's point defense guns noticed the small target. Dozens of laser turrets swiveled and opened fire. Lines of light crisscrossed the void, all aimed at the single, small figure. He moved through them like a ghost. He twisted, turned, and accelerated, dodging every shot. It was impossible. It was like watching a bird fly through a storm of bullets and not get hit. He reached the hull of the massive cruiser and landed on it, his claws digging into the metal to hold on. He was so small against the vastness of the warship, like a bug on a wall. The cruiser's main cannon was at full power. It was about to fire and destroy the derelict. Then, Sumi saw Danny raise his clawed hands. He plunged them into the cruiser's hull. The black material of the suit began to spread from his hands, crawling over the ship's armor like a fast-growing vine. Where it spread, the hull turned dark and brittle. A huge section of the hull, right under the main cannon, simply disintegrated. It turned into millions of pieces of dust, flying off into space. The cannon, now unsupported, sagged and sparked, its power fading. The cannon did not fire. The derelict ship was safe. The shuttle was safe. Sumi couldn't believe what she was seeing. One man had just disabled the main weapon of a Cthar battlecruiser. Captain, Danny's distorted voice came over the comm, filled with static. The shuttle is free. Get them. Go. Danny, we can't leave you. Sumi shouted. Go. His voice growled, more alien and forceful than before. This is what I am now. I will draw their fire. I will keep them busy. Go. He turned away from them. On the screen, Sumi saw him tear a new hole in the cruiser's hull and disappear inside the enemy ship. She sat in her chair, her whole body trembling. The quiet, kind engineer was gone. He had put on the monster to save them. And now he had walked into the belly of the beast alone. She had her crew to save. With a heavy heart, she gave the order. Recover the shuttle. Prepare for hyperspace jump. As the Gumiho's Luck moved away, the last thing she saw on the scanner was the Cthar cruiser. It was turning its every weapon inward, trying to target the threat that was now inside it. The entire ship was in chaos. The hunt had begun. The inside of the Cthar cruiser was a world of harsh green metal and sharp angles. Red alarm lights flashed, spinning and painting the corridors in pulses of panic. A loud, wailing siren screamed through the air. For the soldiers inside, it was the sound of a lockdown. For Danny, it was the sound of the hunt. He stood in a dark service corridor, his black armor blending into the shadows. The suit fed information to his mind. A map of the ship appeared in his vision, showing him the quickest path to the main reactor. He could feel the vibrations of the ship through his feet. He could hear the shouts of soldiers echoing down distant halls. They were looking for him. He moved. He was not loud and heavy. He was a silent shadow, flowing from one dark corner to the next. The suit muffled all sound. His body made point. Two Cthar soldiers ran past his hiding spot, their heavy boots clanging on the floor. They did not see him. They were young, their green faces tight with a fear they did not understand. They were talking quickly. Just one of them. How did it get on board? One said. The scanners say it's not human. The energy reading is all wrong. It's like a ghost. The other replied. They moved on, their voices fading. Danny waited until they were gone. He felt a strange calm. The suit's cold presence in his mind kept his own fear locked away. It turned his terror into focus. He continued down the corridor. He reached a large intersection. A squad of 6 Cthar soldiers was setting up a barricade. They had a heavy plasma cannon. They pointed it down the hallway, waiting for the monster to come. Danny did not come from the hallway. He looked up. The ceiling was high, with pipes and conduits running along it. The suit calculated the path in an instant. He jumped. His claws dug into the metal above. He moved along the ceiling, silent and upside down, like a spider. The soldiers below never looked up. They stared down their sights, breathing heavily. Danny dropped down behind them. They heard a soft thud and turned. The thing of obsidian and bone was already among them. It moved faster than their eyes could follow. It was a blur of black and sharp, glowing red from the visor. The one with the heavy cannon tried to turn it. It was too slow. A black claw sliced through the weapon's power pack. It exploded in a small shower of sparks, throwing the soldier back. The others fired their rifles. Plasma bolts filled the air. Danny moved between them. The suit showed him the paths of the bolts before they were fired. He weaved through the green energy, untouched. His claws were a whirlwind. He did not try to be gentle. The suit would not allow it. It was made for one thing: consumption. He grabbed a soldier's arm. The black tendrils shot from his palm, piercing the armor. The soldier screamed, a short, choked sound. The light in his eyes faded, and his body turned to dust. Another soldier swung his rifle like a club. Danny caught the weapon and crushed it. His other hand found the soldier's chest. Another life was taken. Another husk fell to the floor. It was over in less than 10 seconds. The hallway was silent again, except for the wailing alarm. 6 piles of gray dust were already settling on the clean, green floor. Danny stood in the middle of it. He felt the suit hum with power. It was warm now, filled with the energy it had taken. He felt stronger, faster. The horror was still there, deep down, but it was buried under the suit's cold efficiency and the fierce need to survive. He continued his journey deeper into the ship. On the bridge of the cruiser, Supreme Commander Valen watched the security feeds. His large, muscular body was tense. His cold, black eyes were fixed on a screen that showed the empty hallway with the 6 piles of dust. One of his officers turned from a console, his voice shaking. "Sir, we have lost contact with Squad Gamma in Sector 7. Life signs extinguished." "Show me the last visual," Valen commanded, his voice a low growl. The main screen switched to the helmet camera feed of one of the soldiers. It was a chaotic mess, a blur of black movement, the screams of his men, and then static. Valen had fought many enemies. He had conquered worlds. He had seen brave warriors and powerful weapons. But this was different. This was not a fight. This was an extermination. The thing moved through his ship like it was walking through an empty field. His soldiers were not soldiers to it. They were food. "Where is it now?" Valen asked. "It is moving, sir. It is heading downward, towards the engineering decks." The officer paused, his face pale. "Sir, it is heading for the main reactor." A cold dread filled Valen's heart. "Seal all blast doors between its position and engineering. Redirect all internal security forces. I want that thing contained." But he knew it was useless. The blast doors were strong, but the thing had torn through the ship's hull. What was a door compared to that? Down in the lower decks, a young Cthar soldier named Tal gripped his rifle. He was part of a squad guarding a main junction that led to the reactor. He could hear the fighting getting closer. The screams over the comms had stopped. Now there was only silence, and that terrible wailing alarm. "Hold your positions," his squad leader barked, but Tal could hear the fear in his voice. A heavy blast door in front of them suddenly glowed red in the middle. For lines appeared, like a hot knife was cutting through the metal. With a shriek of tearing metal, a large, square piece of the door was pushed inward. It fell to the floor with a deafening clang. Standing in the new doorway was the shadow. It was taller than a Cthar. This black armor seemed to drink the light. The only color was the faint, red glow from its visor. It stood there, perfectly still, looking at them. "Fire!" the squad leader screamed. A storm of plasma fire erupted from 20 rifles. The air became solid green light. The thing should have been vaporized. It moved. It dropped to the ground and moved on all fours, like a beast. It zigzagged between the bolts. It was so fast it was just a black smear. Tal fired and fired, but he couldn't hit it. It was like trying to shoot a ghost. The thing reached the first soldier. Tal saw the black claws flash. The soldier crumbled to dust. It moved to the next, and the next. It did not stop. It did not slow down. Tal's squad leader bravely charged forward with a combat knife. The thing caught his arm and simply pulled. The squad leader vanished into a cloud of dust. Tal was alone. He stood frozen, his rifle shaking in his hands. He had dropped to his knees without realizing it. The thing had finished with the others. Turned its head. The red visor looked directly at him. It started walking towards him. Slowly now. There was no need to run. Tal tried to scream, but no sound came out. He dropped his rifle and held up his hands. He was just a young soldier. He didn't want to die. He didn't want to turn to dust. The creature stopped in front of him. It looked down at him. Tal stared up into the red glow of its visor. He thought he could see a shape behind it. A face? He didn't know. For a moment, nothing happened. The creature just looked at him. Then, it turned away. It walked past him, ignoring him completely. It continued down the corridor towards the reactor. Tal collapsed onto the floor, sobbing with relief. He was alive. The monster had spared him. He didn't know why. He didn't care. He just lay there, trembling. As the black figure disappeared into the shadows of the ship, Danny left the young soldier behind. The suit had urged him to consume, to take the easy energy. But Danny had pushed back. He had seen the terror in the soldier's eyes. He was just a kid. He wasn't a threat. For a moment, Danny had been in control. Not the suit. He reached the final door to the main reactor chamber. It was the strongest door on the ship, made of thick, reinforced metal. He didn't try to cut it. He placed both hands on the center of the door. The black material of the suit flowed from his hands, spreading over the metal like spilled ink. Where it touched, the metal hissed and dissolved. In seconds, a large hole opened up. He stepped through into the vast reactor room. In the center was the pulsing heart of the ship, a massive cylinder of contained energy, glowing with a powerful blue light. On the bridge, an alarm screamed louder than all the others. "Sir, the intruder is in the main reactor. It has breached the containment door." Supreme Commander Valen watched the feed from the reactor room. He saw the black armor standing before the reactor core. He knew what was going to happen. The thing was going to blow up the reactor and destroy the ship. He prepared to give the order to abandon ship. But the creature did not attack the reactor. Instead, it walked right up to the core. It placed its hands directly on the glowing energy shield. "What is it doing?" An officer whispered. The suit began to glow. The powerful energy from the reactor flowed into the black armor. The red lines on the suit brightened, turning a fierce, electric blue. The creature was not destroying the reactor. It was draining it, drinking its power. The lights on the bridge flickered. The main screens went dark for a second before coming back on. Reactor output dropping to 40%, 30%. "It's sucking the power dry," the engineering officer yelled. Valen could only watch in horror. This was worse than destruction. This was violation. Inside the reactor room, Danny felt immense power flooding into the suit. It was more than all the life force he had taken combined. The suit was storing it, processing it. New information appeared in his mind. New abilities. He could feel the ship systems now. He could feel its weakness. He had what he needed. He removed his hands from the reactor. The core was dim now, running on emergency reserves. He turned and walked back towards the hole he had made. He had one last thing to do. He reached the outer hull of the ship. He placed his hands on the interior wall. The suit used the massive energy it had just stolen. The hull metal dissolved before him, opening a hole directly to the outside. The cold vacuum of space waited. He looked back once into the ship he had terrorized. He could hear the distant shouts, feel their fear. He had done what he set out to do. He had drawn their fire. He had given his crew time to escape. Now, he had to find his own way out. He stepped through the hole, out of the cruiser, and back into the silent, star-filled void. Behind him, the great Cthar warship drifted, powerless and terrified, its lights flickering like a dying candle. The silence of space was absolute. Danny floated, a small dark speck against the infinite starfield. Behind him, the Cthar cruiser was a wounded beast. Its lights flickered weakly. Its weapons were dark. He had taken its power and broken its spirit. For a moment, there was only peace. It did not last. A new voice crackled in his mind. Not from the suit, but over a general comms frequency. It was Captain Sumi. "Danny, can you hear me? Your signal just appeared. We are on the far side of the derelict ship. Are you okay?" Her voice was a tether to his old life. He grasped for it. "I am functional," he replied, his voice still a distorted growl. It was harder to speak now. The suit felt more like his own skin, its thoughts mixing with his. "Stay there. We will come and get you," Sumi said, her voice firm. "No." The word came out sharper than he intended. He looked at the other ships in the Cthar Armada. They had seen everything. They had stopped their attack. They were just hovering, watching. "It is not safe. They are still here. They are watching you." He was right. On the bridge of the Cthar command ship, Supreme Commander Valen stared at the tactical display. The scavenger ship, the Gumiho's Luck, had moved from behind the derelict. It was vulnerable, his fist clenched. This human ship was the reason for this disaster. They had unleashed the monster. All remaining ships, Valen commanded, his voice thick with rage and shame. Target the human vessel. Destroy it. Wipe it from the stars. On the Gumiho's luck, a crewman yelled in panic. Captain, the other Kthar ships, they are powering weapons. They are locking onto us. Sumi's heart sank. They had survived the cruiser, but they could not survive the entire armada. This was it.I in the void. Danny saw it too. The other warships turned. Their weapons glowed with deadly light. They were going to kill his friends, the last of his crew. A hot, human anger burned through the suit's cold control. The suit responded to his fury. It saw the new threat, the new prey. Directive: eliminate threats to designated assets. New information flooded Danny's mind. The suit had absorbed the cruiser's power. It had learned from its systems. It now understood Kthar technology, their shield frequencies, their weapon weaknesses. Time to go to work, Danny thought, and the suit agreed. He did not fly towards the Gumiho's luck. He flew towards the nearest attacking warship. This ship was smaller, a destroyer. Its point defense guns saw him coming and opened fire. But Danny was different now. He was full of power. He didn't just dodge. He held up a hand. The suit formed a disk of solid, black energy in front of him. The plasma bolts hit the disk and were absorbed. Making it glow brighter, he reached the destroyer's hull. He didn't tear his way in. He simply placed his hand on it. The suit extended, sinking into the metal like roots into soil. He felt the ship systems. He found its main power conduit. With a mental command, he sent a surge of stolen reactor energy back through the connection. Deep inside the destroyer, its main engine overloaded. A series of internal explosions tore through the ship. It blew apart from the inside, a brief, silent flower of fire and debris. The other Kthar ships hesitated. They had seen their sister ship destroyed in an instant. Danny did not hesitate. He flew towards the next ship, a larger cruiser. They fired everything they had at him.
Missile, laser, plasma canon.
It was a storm of death. He moved through it all. He was no longer just a predator. He was a force of nature. The suit created hard light shields to block the heaviest fire. It used the energy from absorbed attacks to fuel short, teleporting jumps, blinking in and out of existence, making him impossible to target. He landed on the cruiser. This time, he went for the bridge. He carved a hole directly into the command center. The Kthar officers stared in terror as the Black Nightmare stepped out of the vacuum into their midst. He didn't kill them. He just looked at them, his red visor scanning their faces. He could feel their terror. It was a physical thing, a scent in the air. He let them feel it. Then, he turned and plunged his claws into the main control console. The suit's tendrils burrowed in, and he poured chaos into the ship's computer. The cruiser spun out of control, its weapons firing randomly into the void. He left it there, a helpless, chaotic mess, and moved to the next target. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration. A lesson. On the command ship, Valen watched his armada fall apart. One ship was destroyed. Another was disabled. A third was caught in its own crossfire. All by one being. This was not a soldier. This was an extinction-level event wearing a human shape. A new transmission came through. It was not from the monster. It was from the human captain. The woman's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired, but her eyes were hard. Kthar commander, she said. Cease your attack. Valen felt a bitter laugh rise in his throat. You dare to command me? You? Who unleashed this abomination? We did not unleash it, Sumi replied, her voice cold as space. You did. You came here to take what was not yours. You killed my crew. You pushed one of my people into a corner. You gave him no choice but to put on that suit. She leaned closer to the screen. You thought you were bringing a weapon to a fight, but you are a fool. You didn't understand that for a human, a weapon is just a tool. Valen was silent. He watched the black figure on his screen, now calmly tearing the engines from his last frigate. And you, Sumi said, her words landing like hammer blows. You just gave your ultimate weapon to a species that perfected spite. You pushed a quiet, peaceful man until he decided that if he had to be a monster to protect his family, then he would be the worst monster you have ever seen. The transmission ended. Valen slumped in his chair. The bridge was silent. The wailing alarms from the other ships were the only sound. He looked at the tactical display. His mighty armada, the pride of the Kthar expansion, was in ruins. And the cause of it all was now floating calmly in the center of the battlefield. Waiting. The human was right. This was not warfare. This was a reckoning. He had lost. The silence returned. The last Kthar warship, a frigate, drifted helplessly, its engines dark. The others were either destroyed or floating without power. The battlefield was a graveyard of ships, and at its center was a single, dark figure. Danny floated, waiting. The suit was quiet, its hunger satisfied for now. The burning anger that had driven him was gone, leaving only a deep, cold emptiness. He had done it. He had saved his crew. But he felt no victory. He only felt the weight of the dust on his hands that on the bridge of the Cthar command ship. Supreme Commander Valen knew it was over. His career, his fleet, his honor, all were gone. There was only one thing left to do. He had to face the consequences. "Open a channel to that thing," he ordered. His voice hollowed. A connection was made. Valen saw only the black void and the stars on his screen. "I am here," a distorted voice said. It was calm. It held no anger. That made it even more terrifying. "I am Supreme Commander Valen of the Cthar Armada." He took a shaky breath. "What are you?" For a long moment, there was no answer. Then the figure began to move. It flew slowly, purposefully, towards the command ship. The crew on the bridge panicked. They backed away from their stations, expecting an attack. The creature landed on the hull with a soft thud that echoed through the ship. It walked to the main bridge viewport. Every Cthar on the bridge could see it now. A silhouette of obsidian and bone against the stars. It placed a clawed hand on the thick transparasteel window. Valen expected the window to shatter. He expected to be sucked into the void. He expected to die. Instead, the black armor on the creature's head began to change. The solid helmet seemed to melt away, retreating into the suit's collar. Beneath it was a human face. It was pale and tired. The eyes were shadowed with a deep exhaustion, but they were human eyes. They were not the eyes of a monster. They were the eyes of a man who had seen too much. "My name is Danny," the man said, his real voice hoarse but clear. "I am an engineer from the ship Gumiho's Luck." Valen could only stare. The ultimate predator, the xenophage, had a human face. "I am a human," Danny continued, his voice growing stronger. "I put on a monster to stop other monsters. But we have a choice you never offered us." He looked directly at Valen, and the Supreme Commander felt a chill. "You will surrender," Danny said. It was not a request. "You will order every ship in your armada to power down their weapons and engines. You will disarm. Completely." Valen's pride fought back for a moment. "And if I refuse?" Danny's expression did not change. The suit around his neck twitched, a reminder of the power that lay just beneath the skin. "Then I will finish what I started. I will consume every last one of you. I will leave this system empty. And then I will find your homeworld, and I will tell them the same story." The threat was not spoken with anger. It was spoken with a simple, terrifying certainty. He was not boasting. He was stating a fact. Valen believed him. He had seen the proof. "What is your choice?" Danny asked. The Supreme Commander's shoulders slumped. All the fight went out of him. He turned to his communications officer. "Broadcast to the entire fleet. All ships are to stand down. Power down all weapons and defensive systems. Prepare to be boarded by the humans." The order went out. Across the broken armada, the remaining lights of weapon systems flickered and died. The Cthar Armada had surrendered. Danny gave a slow, single nod. "You will leave this sector. You will never return. You will tell your people what happened here. You will tell them that humanity is not to be hunted. You will tell them what happens when you push us into a corner." He looked at the faces of the terrified Cthar on the bridge. "Now, get out of my sight." He stepped back from the viewport. The black helmet flowed up from his collar, covering his face once more. He turned and launched himself into space, heading towards the Gumiho's Luck. The Cthar ships, slow and powerless, began the long, shameful journey home. That a short time later, a small shuttle from the Gumiho's Luck approached Danny. The bay door opened. He flew inside and landed softly on the floor. The door closed. Air hissed back into the room. Captain Sumi stood there, alone. She had sent the others away. She held no weapon. She just looked at the thing that had been her engineer. For a moment, they stood in silence. The suit was still, but Danny could feel its awareness, watching the captain. Slowly, carefully, the helmet melted away again. Danny's face was wet with tears. He had not known he was crying. "Captain?" he whispered. Sumi took a step forward, then another. She did not stop until she was right in front of him. She looked up at the terrifying armor, at the claws, at the bone-like plates. Then she looked at his face. She reached out a hand. She did not touch his face. Instead, she placed her hand gently on the black armor of his chest. It was warm. "You came back," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I told you I would," he replied. Is it still you in there, Danny?" He nodded slowly. "It is, but it's also the suit. It's a part of me now. I can feel it. His thoughts, his hunger. I don't think I can ever take it off." Sumi looked at the armor, at the power it held, and then back at his tired, sad eyes. She saw the burden he would carry forever. "Then we will learn to live with it," she said firmly. "Together, as a crew." She turned and led him out of the shuttle bay. The crew was waiting in the corridor. They saw Danny in his armor and flinched. But they saw Sumi walking calmly beside him, and they saw his face. Hannah, her side bandaged, looked at him. She saw the pain in his eyes, the same pain she felt from her wound. She gave him a small, slow nod. There was no fear in her eyes anymore. There was understanding. Danny looked at his crew, his family. They were safe. He held up his arm. The black armor on his wrist shifted and flowed, pulling back from his hand and retreating until it was just a simple, dark bracelet, tight around his wrist. He was just Danny again, in his normal clothes, looking tired and sad. But everyone knew the truth. The monster was not gone. It was just sleeping, and it was theirs. The Gumiho's luck turned away from the wreckage and jumped into hyperspace, heading home. The galaxy would soon hear a new story. A story about a ruthless armada that learned a terrible lesson. They learned that humanity is not just clever or strong. When threatened with extinction, they will wear death itself as a skin. And they will make the universe tremble.